Hey everybody, we are going to do the August 31st daily Bible reading. We're going to be starting out in Ecclesiastes chapter 11 verse 1. Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Give a serving to 7 and also to 8, for you do not know what evil will be on the earth. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth, and if a tree falls to the south or the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it shall lie. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. As you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child, so you do not know the works of God who makes everything. In the morning sow your seed, and in the evening do not withhold your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good. Truly the light is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man lives many years and rejoices in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they will be many. All that is coming is vanity. Rejoicing, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these God will bring you into judgment. Therefore remove sorrow from your heart, and put away evil from your flesh. For childhood and youth are vanity. Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come and the years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them. While the sun and the light, the moon and the stars are not darkened, and the clouds do not return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men bow down, when the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look through the windows grow dim. When the doors are shut in the streets, and the sound of grinding is low, when one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of music are brought low. Also, they are afraid of height, and of terrors in the way. When the almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper is a burden, and desire fails. For man goes to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. Remember your Creator before the silver cord is loosed, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the well. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. All is vanity. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yes, he pondered and sought out and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought to find acceptable words, and what was written was upright words of truth. The words of the wise are like goads, and the words of scholars are like well-driven nails given by one shepherd. And further, my son, be admonished of these. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is wearisome to the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. Psalm 103, verses 15 through 22. As for man, his days are like grass, as a flower of the field, so he flourishes. For the wind passes over it, and it is gone, and its place remembers it no more. But the mercy of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting on those who fear him, and his righteousness to children's children, to such as keep his covenant, and to those who remember his commandments to them. The mercy of the Lord. Those who appeal to God's mercy by proper fear and obedience will overcome the shortness of physical life with eternal life. His throne in heaven. From everlasting to everlasting, God has always ruled over all things. This universal kingdom is to be distinguished from God's mediatorial kingdom on earth. Verse 19. The Lord has established his throne in heaven, and his kingdom rules over all. Bless the Lord, you his angels, who excel in strength, who do his word, heeding the voice of his word. Bless the Lord, all you his host. You ministers of his who do his pleasure. Bless the Lord, all his works in all places of his dominion. Bless the Lord, O my soul. Proverbs 24, verses 13 and 14. My son, eat honey because it is good, and the honeycomb which is sweet to your taste. So shall the knowledge of wisdom be to your soul. If you have found it, there is a prospect, and your hope will not be cut off. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 1 through 16. Imitate me, just as I also imitate Christ. Now I praise you, brethren, that you remember me in all things and keep the traditions just as I delivered them to you. But I want you to know that the head of every man is Christ. The head of woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonors his head. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. For that is one and the same as if her head were shaved. For if a woman is not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it is shameful for a woman to be shorn or shaved, let her be covered. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God, but woman is the glory of man. For man is not from woman, but woman from man. Nor was man created for woman, but woman for the man. For this reason, the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head, because of the angels. Nevertheless, neither is man independent of woman, nor woman independent of man in the Lord. For as woman came from man, even so man also comes through woman. But all things are from God. Covered dishonors. Literally, having down from the head is probably a reference to men wearing a head covering, which seems to have been a local custom. Jews began wearing head coverings during the 4th century AD, although some may already have been wearing them in New Testament times. Apparently, Corinthian men were doing the same, and Paul informs them that it is a disgrace. Paul is not stating a universal law from God, but acknowledging a local custom, which did not reflect divine principle. In that society, a man's uncovered head was a sign of his authority over women, who were to have their heads covered. For a man to cover his head was to suggest a reversal of proper roles. Verse 13. Judge among yourselves. Is it proper for a woman to pray to God with her head uncovered? Does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it is a dishonor to him? But if a woman has long hair, it is a glory to her. For if her hair is given to her for a covering. But if anyone seems to be contentious, we have no such custom, nor do the churches of God. Woman who prays or prophesies. Paul makes clear directives that women are not to lead or speak in the services of church, but they may pray and proclaim the truth to unbelievers, as well as teaching children and other women. This is a common, very common argument. And I think sometimes we have to remember the full context that things were said in. Wherever and whenever women do pray and proclaim the word appropriately, they must do so maintaining a proper distinction from men. Uncovered. In the culture of Corinth, a woman's covered head while ministering or worshiping was a symbol to signify a subordinate relationship to her husband. The apostle is not laying down an absolute law for women to wear veils or coverings in all churches for all time, but is declaring that the symbols of the divinely established male and female roles are to be genuinely honored in every culture. As in the case of meat offered to idols, there is nothing spiritual about wearing or not wearing a covering, but manifesting rebellion against God's order was wrong. Dishonors her head. Head may refer to her own self being disgraced by refusing to conform to recognized symbols of submission, or to her husband, who is disgraced by her behavior. We have to be real careful with that section of Scripture because Jesus and Paul both admonished women who were ministering in the faith. So we have to be real careful with that. We do have hierarchy, and we are to be submissive to our husbands. It's also in there, though, that we are to be treated properly by our husbands. And so, you have to keep all of that in balance whenever you start going into these particular teachings. We have to take the Bible as a whole, not piecemeal it. We can't cut it apart. Day 31. How does Solomon balance enjoyment in life with the coming judgment? What a good question. In Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 9 through 12, verse 8, Solomon crystallizes the book's message. Death is imminent, and with it comes retribution. Enjoyment and judgment, though strange partners, come together in this section because both clamor for man's deepest commitment. Surprisingly, one does not win out over the other. In a world created for enjoyment but damaged by sin, judgment and enjoyment, pleasure, are held in tension. With too much pleasure, judgment stands as a threatening force. With too much judgment, enjoyment suffers. In the final analysis, both are prominent themes of life that are resolved in our relationship to God, the primary issue of life in this book. Rejoice, judgment. In verse 9, the two terms seem to cancel out the other. How can this be explained? Enjoy life, but do not commit iniquity. The balance that is called for ensures that enjoyment is not reckless, sinful abandonment. Pleasure is experienced inside of faith and obedience. For as Solomon has said repeatedly, one can only receive true satisfaction as a gift from God. Fear God, Solomon's final word on the issues raised in this book, as well as life itself, focuses on one's relationship to God. All of the concern for a life under the sun with its pleasures and uncertainties was behind Solomon. Such things seemed comparatively irrelevant to him as he faced the end of his life. But death, in spite of the focused attention he had given to it in Ecclesiastes, was not the greatest equalizer. Judgment, retribution, is the real equalizer as Solomon saw it. For God will bring every person's act to judgment. Unbelievers will stand at the great white throne judgment, and believers before Christ at the bema judgment. When all is said and done, the certainty and finality of retribution give life the meaning for which David's oft-times foolish son had been searching. Whatever may be one's portion in life, accountability to the God whose ways are often mysterious is both eternal and irrevocable. That concludes the August 31st, which concludes August, daily Bible reading. It concludes the book of Ecclesiastes, and we'll be going into the Song of